Hey everybody, this is Mark Sandvig, and I am joined by Allison DiMichele from Elevate,
One.
and we are going to be diving in today. This conversation today is a pairing with a class that was about kind of mindset, fundamentals, common mistakes when it comes to team building a team, establishing leverage in your business. So Allison, today we're going to be diving into kind of tools, steps, kind of the process for people who are thinking through the tactical questions.
Yeah. And as team leaders, we coach and consult agents all the time. So these are questions that come up on a regular basis. So it made sense to do a video to kind of answer the questions we see most frequently.
Right, exactly. So before we dive into kind of the presentation that I've got here, I want to show you guys a tool. If you've not been, I know many agents have not been to KW Connect. So this is KW Connect. If you're a KW agent, you have access to this. If you're not, let's talk about how you might become one. In the resources tab here, you go down to leverage, which is what we're talking about here. And there's a lot of the tools that we're going to be talking about today are within here. So just wanted to kind of voice that before we dive in a bit more to our conversation today.
Perfect.
That I'm going to dive into the presentation. We'll go from here, steps and tools. So before we talk about tactics of a team, the ins and outs of the tools, we have to set a course. Allison, can you give us a kind of a 30-second overview of what exactly is the GPS?
Sure. The GPS, or the 135, is a way to have a working relationship with your goals. And I know many of us, we set goals at the beginning of the year or maybe at that halfway point. And at many times we will write something down or talk about it and never revisit those. So what the GPS allows us to do is to identify what those goals are and put an action plan in place. So your goal, as you see here, is the one big thing that you want to accomplish in a period of time, whether that's a month or for the 6 month or year period that you're looking at. And then a priority is a way to put something in place to achieve that big goal by itself. And the strategies are more tactics that you can implement each week, something to chunk it down, biting one bite of the elephant at a time, for lack of better words.
Right. And the strategy is fully controllable. There's no guesswork. It's, I can do this every week or every month. It's not, I hope this happens, or I hope doing this will yield this. It's, I do this, which then works upstream. The goal is not something that you control, but the strategy is as you work towards that. This was put in place by Gary Keller because many businesses have really elaborate business plans that nobody knows what they are, and it takes a degree in order to understand. So the goal of this is for you, if I wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're groggy, to have a clarity and a specificity to what you're doing, that you can in one page have a business plan. So that's what the 135 is. If you're thinking about building a team and you don't have this in place, stop, go there, and then let's pick back up, because having a trajectory is foundational to all of this. Next, we talk about the value proposition. Allison, what's the value proposition and why should it matter to folks that are considering building a team?
So the value proposition is what helps differentiate you from every other team out there. And if you are interviewing as an agent, if I'm interviewing people to be on their team, I'm going to want to know, why should I choose you over someone else? What are you going to offer me? What are my splits going to be? What do I expect as far as leads? All of those things should be clearly identified in a value proposition, so that's your elevator pitch. And if you're, I came from a team, and so the team that I was on had a very clearly stated value proposition. So in my mind, there was no doubt that I wanted to be there, because there was so much value being presented, and very clear GPS and very clear measurable things that I knew that I was walking into a team that was professional, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Right. Yeah. And you were writing that as though you were talking with a stranger rock star who you want to join your team, and you want them to see, here is why you should consider joining my team as opposed to doing something else.
Right.
Many people start teams with a friend, or there's an existing relationship that has them thinking about this. Don't think about that person. Think about the person a few steps removed, and how you might convince them, for lack of better language, of why they should consider working with your team. All right, the first hire. So we've got our trajectory. We understand who we are and the value we provide. Let's talk about kind of the tools of hiring. The first thing I'll say, and then I'll let you jump in and talk about kind of the profiles and tools available there, is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We talk at KW that we are a models and systems company. This chart here that shows the bubbles kind of going down there is one example from the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is kind of the Bible when it comes to all things real estate. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Follow the model. Allison, when I say follow the model, what does that mean? What are temptations, or what does failure to follow the model look like?
So we talk about something called E to P, and it's entrepreneurial to purposeful. And what happens many times with agents, there's a lot of agents that have a similar personality, and that is being entrepreneurial. I want to do things. I have these great ideas. I'm going to do them in the way that I see fit. And what we teach is that when you have a model and a system that is proven and able to be repeated with proven results again and again, that is going to yield more predictable results. So is it possible? Like, can you do something entrepreneurial and have some level of success? Absolutely. And to have that duplicatable and scalable as you grow, that's why we teach the models as the basis. So once you get the fundamentals down, then you can add some creativity in there, but following the model first is what we are going to recommend that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. On KW Connect, the website that I showed as we were getting started, there's a tab that says agent team job profiles. So generally, if you're a solo agent that's looking to build a team, you're going to be looking to bring on an assistant, an administrator, the person who can, if you were to build a full list of all the things that happen in the transaction, they're going to take a lot of those detail work, the nitty gritty, the follow-up, the database, et cetera, so that you can focus on business building. You don't need to come up with that job profile. It's there. You can tweak it. You can modify it. This exists for every possible role within a team. And so go there and play around and take a look. Another tool that I want to highlight in there is the affordability factor. You don't want to be starting a team just because it's interesting to you. Oh, forgive me.
Or if you're on Facebook and you see that's what everybody else is doing, it sounds like something I should look into.
Right. Hang on a second. Sorry about that. Yes. Oh, or I've got a friend. That would be fun. This would be self-actualizing. No, you want to do it because your business can sustain it and you need it in order to go to the next level. And so the first hire calculator is another tool in there. Play around in there. Look at last year's numbers. At our market center, there is a level of expectation that you produced $5 million in the past year. And that's not a status thing. That's basically showing that your business has a robustness that can handle adding someone, and you're going to be able to provide for them as you then grow your business to the next.
And just to make a note on this, Mark, because we get this question a lot when someone is considering building a team, if they have a production level which would merit that. And I know there's different ways to quantify that. It can be at, let's say, 40 transactions in a year, or I know 5 million is another number that we talk about. If someone's achieved that level of volume, that can be time on paper when it's time to look into building that out. And many times people think that they should be hiring a buyer's agent as the first hire to go run buyers all over the place, because we know that's time consuming and it doesn't allow you to focus on listings, for example, if that's what you want your focus to be on. And back to following the model, that first hire really should be an admin. And in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, it talks about that and why. And so if someone is not quite at that point where they are ready to make that hire as an admin where you're responsible for that salary, another thing to consider is to have a transaction coordinator. So at our market centers, we offer that to the agents. So you can leverage that piece of your business off of your plate, that 80% of your business where it's paperwork, contract to close work that is crucially important to be done at a high level. And yet that's not something that you may want to focus on as your highest and best use of your time. You can have that as needed basis versus hiring someone where you're responsible for them.
Right, because at the core, we're talking about leverage. It's not just team for team's sake, it's leverage to give you freedom and focus.
Right.
And so that's a good conversation. Okay, so you've defined the role. You have fine tuned the personality profile, you've double checked kind of the financials to make sure it makes sense. Now you're ready to hire. We have something called the Keller Personality Assessment, KPA, at Keller Williams. Allison, can you give us a synopsis of kind of what the KPA is and the role that it
Sure.
plays in the hiring and identifying talent process?
KPAs are one of my favorite things that Keller Williams offers because we know that this business is such a relationship business that getting to know people at a deeper level is not always easy. If it's your first meeting, your first date, if you will, what the KPA allows us to do is send a link to an assessment to a candidate, a potential recruit, or to someone that's wanting to join as a team or a solo agent in the market center. So what this analyzes based on their answers, it almost feels like you're taking an IQ test, but it's about 45 minutes to an hour. And it goes through a series of questions that analyzes someone's preferred behavioral strengths and their personality strengths. And in our world with unlimited growth opportunities, there are different like portions of the business, whether that's on the sales side or at a market center level or Keller Williams International, where the person's responses will lend themselves to a specific position within our ecosystem. And so when you're hiring someone, we say to hire slow and fire fast. We want to make sure that the person is not only a great fit for our team, but that it's also a great fit, that role that we're hiring them for their personality. Because that stickiness factor and getting them to stay and have longer period of retention, they're going to stay longer if they like the job and if they're good at it. And certain personalities are better suited for certain jobs. So the KPA, when the person finishes the test, it comes to the team leader, for example, or whoever the results are going to, and then it spits out the information that it analyzes about you. Then we sit down with that person and we say, let's verify this information and see if its answers match up with what you would say about yourself. Right. And it goes into that series of questions where you get a whole story about a person. You're seeing that person not just on paper, but it comes to life and it's all about them. And it's not just about the job. It's about what's happened in their lives to bring them to that point. So it's a fantastic tool that we offer to our agents as a complimentary service. It's massively helpful.
Yeah, and it's not fundamentally just about finding the right person. If you found them, now what? And not that the KPA solves all of that, but it facilitates conversation about your dreams, your goals, how closely things align, to move you towards not just finding the right person, but for them to kind of set the table about who we are and what we're doing and what we're about, which will make them a better part of the team and make you work better together as team members. So really valuable tool. One takeaway, if you're an agent and you haven't done a KPA yourself, that's the first place to start. So get in touch with your team leader. They can have one sent and sit down as the first step, as then you consider about what it would look like to participate in that process. Keller Williams also regularly teaches a class called Career Visioning that takes a much deeper dive. Usually it's a day-long or 2-day-long class where you can dive in and really understand how to leverage the KPA tool in building your team well. So if you're thinking about building a team, talk with your team leader about when that might be offered next, that you can participate and learn. All right, team member agreement. I'll get started here and then you can jump in, Allison.
Sure.
The team member agreement is, I put there, all about clarity. It's easy to want to bring on a friend and say, yeah, we'll figure it out. No, you will not figure it out. You will figure it out before you bring on that friend. The team member agreement is basically acknowledging that very few people are going to stay in the role for forever. And so if and when they were to decide to part ways, how do we make sure that we set things up to protect the relationship, to establish clarity? Compensation structure, like you mentioned before, expectations as far as week in, week out activity. How much time are you spending in the office? How many leads? What activity should the team member expect? What can they expect from the team? What happens at parting of ways with leads, with existing contracts, with expenses that were paid on their behalf? This document might feel kind of legalese heavy, and that's not necessarily the intent, but you want to think about hey, if this weren't to work out, how do I make sure that this document protects?
Yeah, and I like that because it's in writing and at the beginning of your relationship, you're sitting down day one when everybody really wants to be there and they're excited, there's no conflict, those things are going to happen. Um, it's a non-emotional document that allows you to look at the facts, what everyone agrees to. Your team member, if you're the rainmaker, the team member that you're hiring will sign that and you will sign that. And what's nice about the team member agreement is that it lays out all of those expectations so that there is no guessing. So you have something to go back and say, well, like in a contract, if there's an issue with a transaction, what does the contract say? That's our first question. What does the contract say? That's what is fact and stands in front of us, similar to the team agreement. And of course, there's always going to be some gray, but you want to prepare. As many teams have gone through this, they'll clarify it and tweak it over the years to make it as bulletproof as possible. So we have sample team agreements if you're starting out and you're not even sure what to include.
Yep, absolutely. All right, developing people. You have, you've made the hire. The team agreement has been signed. They're coming on board. Let's talk about the 30, 60, 90 in particular. What is it and how is it used, Allison?
So the 30, 60, 90 is in place to, again, like the team agreement, have a clear set of expectations. So in the first 90 days of someone's employment, that's a pretty good gauge of whether or not a person's going to work out in a particular role. And so what happens many times in corporate America is that person might not be getting any feedback, good or bad, about their performance. In the 30, 60, 90 is in place to allow that conversation to happen in a natural, structured way. So the 30, 60, 90 stands for the first 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days of someone's employment. And I say that loosely because we're 1099 employees as agents. So your independent contractor relationship with the team. So your first 30 days, there should be metrics that can be reasonably expected for a person to meet. And if you lay out what those are, and put that period of time in place. And then you say, here's what's expected of you. We're going to meet once a week to go over your progress and see where you are. Are you understanding what's expected of you? Do you have any problems? What are the hiccups that you're going through? What can we work through to make this into a win? And at the end of the 30 days, you want to make sure each of those items that were listed are checked off the box before you move on to the next, to the 60 days.
Right.
If at the end of the 90 days, there is a large portion of concern, that makes a natural conversation for people to say, based on your performance, which is a huge key piece of this job, I don't know if this is going to be a great fit. The numbers don't lie. And again, it helps you to stay neutral and non-emotional. Of course, you're going to have a heart, be sad. This is a person. And if you stick to the 30, 60, 90, it really, really helps facilitate that conversation. Anything to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, I would just say that 30, 60, 90, to differentiate it from the job profile or job description, it's not the same. It's not just, oh, here's what you're responsible for. It's making it practical, tactile. Hey, if you're an agent, add 10 new contacts a week to your database. It's read this book. It's attend this thing. It's demonstrate proficiency in X. It's something, it's not just realms of responsibility. It's actionable items that the new person can actually feel empowered by. It's not, we want to free you from feeling like you need to micromanage every member of your team. Your role as a leader is to train and consult them. And so the 30, 60, 90 is a tool that provides the freedom and clarity for someone to take initiative and to be the CEO of their role, to quote Jose. All right, so we've hit a number of things, and we don't want to make this longer than necessary. So we just want to hit a couple of parting thoughts for perspective. First thing is, consider your why. Just because someone online or on social media has a big team doesn't mean that that's what you're supposed to do. What are you really aiming for? What does a team accomplish for you? What does the extra income from it or the extra freedom from it accomplish in your life, and who stands to benefit most? Really drill in on that, because we don't want you fulfilling someone else's dream, because that's going to be a fruitless endeavor.
Right. And because some people, like you said, they might have pressure because they've reached an astronomical amount of business to start this team. They don't want to manage people. That's not really what they want to do. They just feel like that's what they should do. So to really take some quiet introspective time, or to sit with your team leader and have that conversation to say, what do you really want to do? How is this going to move the needle to help form and fund your perfect life?
Right.
It might be an admin or it might not. And you don't have to do anything that's not going to be what you want ultimately. So
Right. Second point is, what can you leverage now? Nobody goes from solo agent to poof team.
right.
What are the pain points? What are the aspects of your business that you can leverage and involve others with? Allison, what are a couple of examples of leverage that might be available to agents?
Well, right now, I mean, we have, like I mentioned, we have our transaction coordinator. And so she's able to help leverage that paperwork side of things. That seems like to be the most consistent pain point for people, because if you have 7, 8, 9 deals running at a time, that's a lot to juggle at the same time. So to get that paperwork off your plate is huge. You can get a sigh of relief. You might not be the best on social media or with marketing, for example. So you can also hire someone to help you with those pieces of your business. If you don't want to build out the postcard that you're going to send to your farm, or find who to farm, you can find someone to help you with that. So if your job as an agent is to go on appointments and convert those to business, the paperwork and all of the other things, if that's not your strong suit, leverage those types of things off. It
Right.
can be
You
a
don't.
college kid that's majored in marketing, for example. The college kids are up to date with all the every latest technology, and they will help maximize your dollar that you're paying them by being super efficient.
Right. You don't. I think sometimes people feel like, oh, I can't afford a full-time W-2 employee with benefits, so I shouldn't do this. Like, no, there's lots of different ways to do it. Talk with Allison or I or your team leader to explore what that might look like. At KW, Allison, we talked about the importance of being learning based. You want to talk about why that's so important and what that might mean for them as far as next steps?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I said at KW, we talk about the importance of being learning based. Can you talk
Yes.
about what that means and why that's important for them in these next steps?
So learning based is another key part of what can propel you forward as an agent, pretty much in any role. I don't care what industry you're in. If you're learning based, it's being humble enough to say there's always a better, more efficient way to get the job done. And when you have tools and systems that we have here at Keller Williams, if you are open to learning new things and just learning the basics, we have those in place. We have so many books, so many resources that are available, and so many other people in our ecosystem that are willing to have those conversations. Other top performing agents, other people that are a couple steps ahead of you where you are in your career. So if you're learning based and wanting to have those conversations, they are everywhere to be had.
Right, right. That's one of the core values of KW. Yeah, from a people standpoint to a tools available standpoint, you're never done learning. Even the top highest performers in our markets then are commit time to learning every week. And we encourage you to do the same. If you're not willing to read, if you're not willing to listen and learn, how do you pretend to think that you can provide that for others? And so it starts with the self. Final point, we've hit this a couple different ways, is we've introduced a lot of things to you. We've talked about a lot of different tools. Might feel a little bit overwhelming. The next step is to talk with your team leader, Allison or I, or yours, depending on where you are, to consider where you are, to analyze your business, and to develop a game plan to grow to a business to have that funds the life that you want. Allison, any other parting words or thoughts?
I always say the culture here is amazing. And I look at not only what I've learned on a professional level, but on a personal level, how much I've grown and the fantastic relationships that I've been able to build. And I attribute that much to my very first experience on a team. So whether the team avenue is what you choose ultimately, or if you choose to be a solo agent, that's okay. I would say just lean into whatever's going to help move you to wherever you want to be, to have that perfect life by design. And we as team leaders are always here to help you in that process.
Well said. Thanks, folks.
Take care.